Welcome, colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We are once again very, very delighted to have you for this very important meeting. A groundbreaking study will be unveiled to us today. And we are indeed very much delighted to have you join us to explore or be the first to know what's in this study, and of course, the first to have this study with us. From the West Africa Civil Society Institute, I am Jim Chick Fomunjong, and again, I will be your host. Thank you very much for joining. We have other colleagues who are joining us, and so just give us some few minutes while we welcome all other colleagues that are joining us. And feel free to engage in the chat. Tell us which town you're joining from, which country you're joining from, the continent. It will be great to learn more about who is in the room for this very important meeting. And for those who are French speakers, pour ceux qui parlent en français, vous êtes la bienvenue pour cette séance. Il y a l'interprétation pour cette réunion. Donc, s'il vous plaît, bien vouloir cliquer sur l'icône de l'interprétation et choisissez votre langue de préférence. Je suis sûr que c'est la langue française. Donc, il faut cliquer sur FR et vous allez suivre tous les débats et pourquoi pas partager vos contributions avec votre langue de convenience. Merci beaucoup pour être avec nous ce matin et je suis très, très convaincu que vous ne serez pas déçus d'être là avec nous ce matin. Une fois de plus, vous êtes la bienvenue. Soyez patients, s'il vous plaît, le temps que nous admettons d'autres participants qui sont en train de nous joindre pour cet échange qui est tellement capital pour les acteurs de la société civile en Afrique de l'Ouest. Moi, je suis Jim Chick Fomunjong et je travaille à WAXI, qui est basé à Accra, en tant que chef du département de gestion des connaissances et de la communication. Merci beaucoup. Et bien vouloir vous introduire dans le chat. Qui êtes-vous? Quelle est votre organisation? Vous êtes basé dans quel pays? Dans quel continent? Pour qu'on commence les collaborations sur ce même plateforme. Merci beaucoup. Welcome, Guillaume Soto. It's good to have you joining us from Uganda. And Cynthia from Nigeria. It is great to have you. I'm sure you will learn more about what this study unveiled about the digital security landscape, in Nigeria. Kelvin Kelia, we are very, very happy to have you here with us. All the way from the Africa Philanthropy Network. It is always good to be with you. Dr. Ben Primus, we are very, very happy to have you. Welcome on board. Christopher Woman, thank you very much. The co-founder of Connect Humanity Fund, joining from Netherlands. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the weather in the Netherlands is quite good this morning. Bruno from Togo, vous êtes la bienvenue, mon frère. On est très, très ravis d'être là avec vous ce matin. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we are very much delighted to be with you for this all-important session, which will be focusing on the launch of a study on landscape mapping of civil society digital security in West Africa. A groundbreaking study commissioned by the West Africa Civil Society Institute with the magnanimous support of the Mott Foundation. Indeed, we very much appreciate the Mott Foundation for this wonderful support. Dear colleagues, kindly, we are very much happy to have you here with us, and we really want to have a smooth discussion. So in order to ensure that the discussions are quite smooth, please kindly do not unmute your microphone unless You are given the opportunity to do so when you raise your hand and you are called up, please. If you have any questions, do well to share them in the chat in English or in French, your language of preference, and we will do well to take these observations, remarks, and questions when the time comes. If you lose your internet connection, do not bother. Just go back to the link that you received after registering and reconnect and join us using the same link. We are very much delighted to have you here, and with your permission, we will be recording this all-important session, and we will share the recording with you. And why not share it on our social media platforms, notably YouTube, so that others who could not make it and who might fall on it in the near future will equally benefit from the discussions that will unfold at this particular discussion table. This is a very important study supported by the Mott Foundation and commissioned by the West Africa Civil Society Institute. And it's important for us to, know why or how we came about, this very important study. It is through an initiative designed, developed by the tech team of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, focusing on digital security capacity strengthening and outreach, a program that seeks to ensure that civil society actors across the region are equipped with the right skills set, to make use in a safe manner of digital technologies that are indispensable for the work that we are doing. And this project seeks to identify digital security policy gaps in West Africa and equip civil society organizations and actors with practical knowledge on digital security threats in the region. Some of the specific objectives of this piece of work include identifying common digital security threats faced by civil society organizations in West Africa, and through this, provide civil society actors with some skills and protocols that we can use to protect ourselves or safeguard ourselves against the existing threats. The project also seeks to raise awareness and promote synergy around these threats by sharing documented case studies of digital security incidents, mitigation strategies, and lessons learned across the region. It also seeks to provide tailored support to civil society organizations in West Africa on practical ways to stay safe online. And this study, which is the landscape mapping of civil society digital security in West Africa, which will be unveiled to us in a very short while, is one of those core elements of this initiative that collates the threats that we have been experiencing as we've shared them, some very useful case studies based on the experiences of these threats by some of our organizations, as well as mitigation strategies that have been adopted by some of us and that are recommended for us to use to stay safe within this space. And I really want to entreat us all to follow the discussions, engage with our observations, with our questions, to make sure that this discussion is quite fruitful, enriching, and why not, entertaining. And to make sure that we will be having a wonderful, a smooth discussion, we actually have here with us some key personnel or personalities who will be, intervening at one point or the other to make sure that this session is a success. Of course, permit me to begin with the very wonderful Evans Tindana Awuni, who is a doctoral researcher at the Willy Brandt School of Public Policy in the University of Erfurt in Germany. He's a research associate at the Institute of African Affairs at the German Institute of Global and Area Studies in Hamburg, Germany. His current research focuses on digitalization and the future of work and politics in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you very much, Evans, for joining us for this session. How are you this morning, Evans?
I'm doing great. Jim. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to see this beautiful smile on your face. And of course, dear colleagues, await more of these smiles. And Evans is actually the lead researcher on this piece of work, and he'll be coming in a short while to share with us more insights on this very critical study. Thank you once again, Evans. We equally have Temitope Ogundipe, who is the founder and executive director at the Tech Societal, a non-profit social enterprise focused on reducing digital inequalities and digital harms by fostering safety, rights, and inclusion online for vulnerable and undeserved groups, particularly including women and youth. Tech Societal engages with technology and on digital policies and programs for safety, rights, and inclusion, and it works in areas of capacity building and research. Temitope, good morning, and it's good to have you here with us. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. And dear wonderful colleagues, Temitope will be sharing with us some critical perspectives on the relevance of such a study at this time and how we can capitalize on this study to advance our work in a safe manner, in society. Thank you very much for being with us. We equally have Dr. Kelechukwu Okezi, who is a respected researcher and social entrepreneur in Nigeria. He founded the Neighborhood Environment Watch Foundation, which focuses on sustainable development through community engagement, research, and advocacy. He has successful partnerships with various organizations and has implemented impactful programs, receiving numerous awards for his contributions to social entrepreneurship and community development in Nigeria. His globally recognized research work adds to his notable achievements in the field. Dr. Okezi, good morning and good to have you here with us. Dr. Okezi, can you hear me, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you 5 on 5.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Thank you very much. We equally have with us the Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, Nana Santewa Afagino, who's joined us specially for this occasion and, of course, will be giving us that opportunity, to make this public, this research available to us all. Hello, Nana. Good morning and good to have you here with us.
Hello, Jim. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, thank you. And of course, our wonderful partner, the Mott Foundation, is represented by Mamo Mohapi, who is the program officer of the Mott Foundation, a wonderful partner who has journeyed along with all of us to make this study, among other actions, a reality. Mamo, good morning. I hope you are in an area that is the morning at this time. Good to have you here with us at this time. Hello, Mamo.
I am indeed. I'm in Johannesburg. It's great to be here. Thanks, Jim.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And once again, colleagues, we are talking about a landscape mapping on civil society, digital security in West Africa. And of course, as civil society actors representing wonderful active organizations across the region, we must have had an encounter or an experience with some digital, experiences. It will be important for us to take a short poll. Let us just share with us. I'm sure my colleague will be sharing a short poll in the chat room. Kindly click on the link and share with us, the extent to which, to what extent are CSOs exposed to digital threats. It will be good to see how the results are churning out, and 0 is to a very low extent, while 5 is to a high extent. It will be good, we can see 55%, it's changing very rapidly, but many more of us are inclined more, sharing that, civil society are highly exposed to digital threats, in this contemporary era. And that is really why that really gives more credence to this piece of work, which of course I am very convinced is something that we will find useful in our day-to-day work. Keep your responses coming, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to appreciate the extent to which our organizations are exposed to digital threats. Thank you very much. And again, this is really revealing. It shows that civil society organizations are really highly exposed to digital threats in this era. And it will really be very important for us to know what some of these threats are, how they manifest themselves in our organizations, the impact they have on our organizations, and the possible strategies that we can take upon ourselves to mitigate these existing or potential threats to our great work. And at this juncture, permit me to invite the very wonderful, dynamic, and excellent researcher who collaborated with us on this piece of work, Mr. Evans Tindana. Can you kindly take up the microphone and share with us some key insights of this study? Thank you, and Evans, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Host, can you please permit me to share the screen?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be made a co-host in a short while. And dear colleagues, once again, as Evans presents, the key highlights from this piece of work, feel free if there are some questions that are coming up, if there are some observations or reflections that are coming to mind, do not hesitate to drop them in the chat in either the French or the English languages. We shall surely take on all or some of them when time permits. Over to you, Evans. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Hello, everyone. Thanks for making it to the webinar. I am delighted to also welcome you to the launch of our research on landscape mapping of civil society digital security in West Africa. I would like to congratulate WACSI for this timely and highly significant study. I would also like to thank and congratulate the entire research team, some of who are present today in this webinar, for the entire project and for the successful implementation of this project. The report sheds light on the experiences, the challenges facing civil society organizations in the region, and it provides practical recommendations for improving their digital security. We believe that this report is an essential resource, as Jim rightly mentioned, for all stakeholders involved in promoting digital security in West Africa. In this presentation, we will be sharing with you some key findings and recommendations of the report. And we hope that the presentation will not only be informative, but also thought-provoking, and will encourage us all to promote and practice digital security in our organizations. So, arguably, civil society organizations represent a third force in the development trajectory of every country, separate from the government and the private sector. They are essential actors in shaping public discourse, encouraging accountability, and promoting community development. And in today's digital era, digital technology plays a significant role in the operations and activities of CSOs, enabling them to reach wider audiences, collaborate effectively, and promote their missions. Just to mention a few examples, social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter are used for information sharing and promotion, enabling CSOs to disseminate information, advertise events, and engage with their stakeholders. Online donation platforms, including Give Directly, Just Giving, GoFundMe, and so on and so forth, empower CSOs to fundraise through donation appeals, product sales, and crowdfunding campaigns. So without doubt, digital technology is becoming deeply intertwined with the work of CSOs. Ensuring digital security is therefore critical to protecting the effectiveness and the impact of these organizations. Meanwhile, as CSOs increasingly rely on digital technology for their operations, they also become more vulnerable to digital security threats. The shift towards digital activities, precipitated by COVID-19, has amplified the potential for digital security threats to CSOs. Unfortunately, the lack of resources, technical capacities, and national digital security programs tailored to accommodate CSOs in West Africa exacerbates their vulnerability, underscoring the importance of addressing digital security concerns and implementing strategies to promote CSOs' cybersecurity threats or cyber threats. Now, this research aimed to provide a comprehensive understanding of the digital security landscape for CSOs in West Africa. And just to be specific, we approached the research with 6 main objectives in mind. The first was to identify and analyze the most common digital security threats CSOs in West Africa face. And
hello, Evan.
Secondly, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you abruptly, and colleagues, sorry. We will come back to these objectives. Apparently, our interpreter, they are muted. So our colleagues in French or French-speaking colleagues cannot smoothly follow the conversations. Kindly permit us to re-invite our interpreters and ensure that our French speakers are following smoothly as well. These threats are impacting us, indiscriminately, irrespective of the countries or the language we speak. And so it's important that, our colleagues who are here who speak French equally follow to understand what this study has for us. Les collègues en français, colleagues, is the interpretation going on well? Can colleagues, French-speaking colleagues, can they confirm? Est-ce que ça marche jusqu'à présent?
On reçoit mieux maintenant, on reçoit mieux l'interprétation.
OK, merci beaucoup. Merci pour votre confirmation. On apprécie. Sorry, Evans, and kindly take us through the objectives that guided, the great work that we did together. Evans?
All right. Thank you, Jim. So first, we sought to identify and analyze the most common digital security threats facing CSOs in West Africa. Secondly, to assess the exposure of these CSOs to digital security threats and attacks, and then also to evaluate the preparedness of CSOs in responding to digital security threats and attack. And then examining also the national level policy framework in West Africa that address digital security, as well as the organizational level digital security policies that also seek to address digital security. And lastly, identifying the major challenges CSOs face in their efforts to promote their digital security threats. I will be presenting the results in the order of these objectives. But before then, let's take a look at the methodology we employed in this research. To accomplish the research objectives and provide an in-depth understanding of the digital security landscape for CSOs in West Africa, we employed a multifaceted methodology. First, we conducted a thorough analysis of the digital security literature, as well as national level regulatory framework, including legislations, policies, strategy documents, and so on and so forth. Afterwards, we developed and rolled out a survey questionnaire to which 284 CSOs representatives from a pool of over 2,000 responded. These CSOs are distributed. They are distributed across all 15 ECOWAS countries, as well as countries like Cameroon, Chad, and Mauritania. So in all, 18 countries were included in the study. This allowed for us to gather a wide range of perspectives and experiences related to digital security. Next, we conducted in-depth interviews with 24 respondents selected from a list of over 60 CSOs that reported having experienced digital security threats within the last 6 months. By employing such a methodology, we sought to provide a comprehensive picture of the digital security landscape in West Africa. So now let's move to the results. Beginning with some key insights on the most common digital security threats facing CSOs in West Africa. Because of time, most of the insights we'll be sharing with you in this presentation are from the survey, but you can read more about the case studies in the main report, and I'm also happy to really respond to questions later on if there are any. Based on the survey, we found that 3 out of every 10 of the sample CSOs had suffered a digital security attack within the last 12 months. 48% of the victims suffered virus attacks that resulted in data loss. And lastly, Nigeria accounts for a lion's share of the experienced attacks, followed by Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea. Now, let's look at some details. I mentioned that a third of the sampled CSOs experienced digital security attacks. Of these, 48% experienced computer virus attacks. In other words, computer virus attacks were the most common. Apart from that, 43% also experienced social media attacks. 33% also experienced email attacks, and about a quarter even experienced physical attacks. In terms of geographical distribution of the attacks, I mentioned earlier that Nigeria leads the pack. In the main report, we show the geographical distribution also by type of attack, and it appears Nigeria leads on all the top 4 attacks, namely virus attacks, social media attacks, email attacks, and physical attacks. In our analysis, we coded all the various forms of attacks CSOs experienced, and then assigned them with their respective so-called technical names, as usually used in the literature. And then we examined their frequency of occurrence. In the report, we have described each of these in detail. Interestingly, malicious code, software and hardware failure, as well as espionage, appear to be the most frequently occurring. For those who are new to this, a malicious code is essentially what is known as malware. Some people call it virus. It's a software program with a malicious intent. Espionage is also one form of a man-in-the-middle attack where the attacker secretly gathers information from the victim without their knowledge and then uses the information later on for some gain. We also found that across board, there was some variation in the type of digital security incidents by type of organization. Overall, international NGOs experience the lowest rate of attacks, whereas community-based organizations and local NGOs experience higher rate of attacks. This perhaps leads to some intuitive conclusion that probably international NGOs are better resourced to tackle their digital security issues compared to community-based organizations and local NGOs. We try to test this assumption by using the age of the organization as a proxy for how established they are and perhaps the resources they may have. We then use that and then the subjective evaluation of the respondents regarding how digitally secure they think their organizations are as a proxy for organizational digital security. As can be seen from the graph, we did not find evidence to suggest that age of the organization mattered for their digital security. However, we also indicated in the report that this is only preliminary and there may be a lot of things to consider. And so this might merit further investigation. Next, after detailing the digital security experiences of civil society organizations, we move on to examine how exposed CSOs are to digital security threats and attacks based on the nature of their activities and their digital security practices. We find that 99% of CSOs use emails, 97% use laptops and desktop computers, 89% use mobile phones and tablets in their operations. So the list goes on and on. Meanwhile, 43% do not know of any methods or ways to protect their digital tools and activities. 67% do not know what to do in case their digital system or device is hacked or infected. And 70% have never participated in any digital security training or courses which taught them how to use the internet or digital devices securely. In line with their low capacity to handle digital security threats, 85% of respondents were worried about the safety of information, and 77% also being worried about the safety of their digital tools. CSO's low capacity and resource challenges are further highlighted when we take a closer look at some of their digital security practices. 95% of the CSOs reported that they use strong passwords for their digital devices and internet accounts. This is really impressive, but it's also interesting because perhaps this is the only basic and free item on the list. The figure drops significantly once we move to relatively more advanced and perhaps expensive techniques. We asked the respondents whether their organizations have a dedicated budget for information security, and unsurprisingly, 73% answered in the negative. So we have learned that most of the CSOs have no financial allocation to serving their digital security needs. Interestingly, the key informant interviews we had with some CSOs revealed that the social and financial cost of attacks could be gravely devastating and sometimes even costly than having a dedicated budget for digital security and putting in place the necessary measures to operate securely in the digital space. For example, in some instances, there were attacks on CSO social media accounts, and the attackers went on to post inappropriate contents, damaging the reputation of the CSOs. And some CSOs reported having lost donors in consequence. So trust and reputational damage are key social consequences that we found associated with digital security attacks in the region. There were also instances where CSOs lost sensitive data, as well as reports they have been working on for years, but had no backup. And so they had to start from the scratch all over again, consequently disrupting their activities. Some CSOs also lost significant amount of time trying to repair the damage caused. And so some also had psychological effects. We use the information that we have from the key informant interviews to estimate some financial cost or potential financial cost of digital security attacks. And we found out that the cost could actually range from as low as around $10,000 to roughly over $500,000 or even more. Having learned about the exposure of CSOs to digital security threats, let's delve into the preparedness towards responding to these threats. You recall that we mentioned earlier that 70% of the respondents have never participated in any digital security training. Of this 30% that have participated in a training, 62% took online courses and 39% taught themselves how to secure themselves from digital security threats. When asked what actually they learned, 92% mentioned that they learned about how to use strong passwords. And again, the figure drops significantly once we move on to more advanced techniques. We asked the respondents what they would be interested in learning should they have the opportunity to participate in a digital security training. And here are the results. You can see that the information on the words like security, protection, and data tend to stand out, suggesting that people are really interested in learning about how to protect their data, how to protect their digital devices. They're really interested in learning about techniques that they can use to protect their devices and information. We also constructed a network diagram, and in the network diagram that you see here, the bigger the circle, the more frequently the word was used by the respondents. And as you can see, the interconnections also demonstrate the patterns in the responses. And again, data protection as well as device security tend to stand out. So we move on to the national level digital security laws and policies in West Africa. Interestingly, a large proportion of the respondents, 45%, were not aware of any national laws or regulations on digital security. We come back to perhaps maybe more details on this later, but it's really worrying that such a large proportion of respondents had no idea about data protection laws or regulations about data security in the region. We also found that 70% of the CSOs are not registered with any data protection agency. Data protection agencies are really important because they provide a framework for handling data within organizations. Organizations constantly are collecting data from stakeholders, from clients, and from donors, et cetera. And so registering with relevant data protection agencies help organizations to stick to data protection rules and regulations. But interestingly, a large proportion of the CSOs have not registered with any data protection policies at all. And as I mentioned earlier, 45% of the respondents are not aware of any national laws or regulations on digital security. Now, we went on to develop some kind of a framework to analyze the countries, and to look at to what extent each of them have comprehensive policies that are meant to address digital security in the region. And you can find details of this in the report, but what perhaps you might be guessing is that not many countries really have comprehensive policies, and your guess is right. Only few countries really have comprehensive policies in place to address digital security. So if you look at countries like Burkina Faso, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo, the comprehensiveness of their policies are somehow better as compared to the rest. Just to highlight some of the gaps and weaknesses in terms of policy, lack of legislation in some countries like Liberia and also Guinea-Bissau pose a significant challenge. In some countries also, some of the legal provisions pose risks to privacy and freedom of expression online. There were also some countries where penalties for cyber crimes were relatively far too low to deter such crimes. And also, harmonization of national digital security regulations is quite low on the continent. It's really important that digital security laws at the national level are harmonized with international frameworks, because digital security cut across, we know that the internet is boundless, right? It has no geographical boundaries. And so there is a need for collaboration in digital security promotion efforts. And so there are a couple of frameworks, international frameworks that are existent. The Budapest Convention is one of them. The African Union also has a framework in place. ECOWAS also has a framework in place, but only a few countries really have let me say, signed and ratified these international frameworks or conventions, particularly the African Union Convention. Oftentimes, whether organizational members adopt digital security practices or not depend also hugely on whether the organization has a policy in place within the organization requiring members to do so. Hence, we now turn to organizational level digital security policies or strategies. Interestingly, 68% of the CSOs do not have any such policies in place within the organization. It's therefore not surprising that digital security vulnerabilities tend to be high for CSOs due to certain practices. For example, 69% of respondents use their personal digital devices for work, and 13% even use other people's private devices for work. Also, 37% of the respondents reported that their spouses and sometimes their friends and family members also use their work devices. And then even more interestingly, 47% of the respondents indicated that their organizations have lost digital devices. And I think we can all imagine what could happen to a lost digital device with sensitive information on it, with no data protection. So when we asked whether they tracked digital devices within the organization, 75% indicated that they do not track their digital devices. In the wake of COVID-19, many employees of CSOs work from home. And this was confirmed by 93% of the respondents mentioning that they work from home. Meanwhile, only about 27% use VPNs, that's virtual private networks, to secure their remote connections. Perhaps the good news is that when it comes to attitudes towards digital security, it appears that many people within CSOs have interest in promoting their digital safety. And so 83% of them call for the attention to digital security within their organizations. We also found that where digital security policies were existent within the organization, in some cases, they were not well disseminated or implemented. Now, let's move to maybe just a few other words on the digital policies within the organization. Apart from weak implementation within the organization, we also found that actually a lot of people did not really understand the contents of the policies at all. And so they were consequently found to deviate from the contents of the set policies. Let's move to the digital security challenges facing CSOs. I think by now, many of you may have already guessed what the potential challenges could be. I will quickly just run through this and we can discuss them later on in the open forum. The first is inadequate ICT and digital security infrastructure among CSOs, followed by low digital security awareness, inadequate training, and limited skills to implement effective cybersecurity measures. Next is limited funding to invest in cybersecurity and dependence on donor funding for operations and also for meeting digital security needs. Next challenge is lack of organizational level digital security policies and strategies. And we know how important organizational level policies could be. There were really very few cases where CSOs really had organizational level policies. And this is a very important challenge. Repression within the civic space is also another key challenge civil society organizations are facing. Oftentimes it appears that civil society organizations tend to be enemies of governments or enemies of government agencies. And so there were instances where civil society organizations reported being attacked, not from by private persons, but by state agencies. So this is also a very important challenge for CSOs in the region. So the list goes on and on, including inadequate legal and regulatory framework and in place at the national level, lack of harmonization with other countries and our international frameworks, understaffed law enforcement agencies with very few or no staff at all, and low capacity to really support in digital security investigations and implementation of policies. Lack of publicly available data to study the prevalence and the determinants and the effects of digital security threats and attacks was also one of the challenges. And then lastly, limited capacity or resources to really invest in prosecuting cybercrime in some countries were also found to be among the challenges. Now, so what are the conclusions that can be made from this study? And what are the recommendations? First, let's move on to recommendations, the conclusions. Based on all the results that I've presented to you, on what conclusions can we make? The first is that the prevalence of digital security threats is high in the region. Some may argue that, well, 30% or 3 in 10 is not all that high, but I think it is really high. And this is really the right time to be really concerned about digital security and to start implementing the necessary measures to secure devices and secure information until it probably gets to the extreme. Second conclusion that can be made is that computer virus attacks and social media attacks and email attacks tend to be the most common form of digital security attacks in the region. And then also community-based organizations and local NGOs experience the highest rate of attacks compared to international NGOs. The majority of CSOs also lack proper knowledge and training on how to protect themselves and their digital security, their digital tools and activities. CSOs in West Africa are facing significant gaps in their preparedness towards responding to digital security issues. The next conclusion is that the West Africa region is faced with inadequate laws and policies coupled with weak or non-implementation. And next, very few CSOs, or only few CSOs, have a computer and information security policy in place. And where those policies were existent, oftentimes effective communication of the policies was not done, and many members were found to be deviating from those policies. There is also a high level of interest among CSOs in acquiring digital security skills. So this is really a very positive thing that we found from the study, that many people showed interest in acquiring the necessary skills should the opportunity avail itself. And then lastly, lack of financial resources and inadequate ICT and digital security infrastructure, as well as low digital security awareness and skills, are all are also kind of prevalent within the region. So basically, these are the main conclusions we can draw from the study. But what recommendations can be made from this study? The first recommendation is that there is a need to increase awareness on digital security. So many employees of CSOs are not aware of the potential threats that they face in operating in the digital space. There has been some attempts, and I think there has been some webinars and also some different forms of training that have been initiated by some organizations to improve upon civil society digital security awareness. I think WACSI is also a leader in this area. So congratulations, WACSI. But I think this needs to be improved, and then this need to be encouraged. We need to encourage awareness creation about digital security among CSOs. The next is also about investment in digital security infrastructure. So we have learned that the cost of perhaps responding to an attack or repairing the damages of an attack can sometimes be even far higher than the cost of putting in place the necessary measures. So it's really important that CSOs take digital security seriously and begin investing in infrastructure on digital security, such as buying original softwares and not use pirated versions, and making sure that their systems are always updated with the latest security patches and here and there. So a lot of digital security infrastructures that are available for free, but there are also a lot that CSOs can invest resources in acquiring, and which will be far helpful than waiting and rather repairing damages of attacks. The next is to train employees on digital security. So many employees have shown interest that they want to learn how to protect themselves and their devices. So this is the right time for CSOs to be really interested in and also empower their employees by helping them to train on digital security. The next is using strong passwords and authentication measures. So this was an area that most CSOs are already doing well, but they can definitely do better, or if anything at all, maintain the effort in using strong password and sometimes even multiple authentication measures for their various accounts. Again, this can be precipitated or perhaps maybe improved upon when organizations have digital security policies in place that kind of implement password policies and that employees have to abide by. The next recommendation is to back up data regularly. So some CSOs have no backups in terms of the data that they are handling in the organizations, and so they face greater risks of losing everything they have been working on in cases of attacks. There is a need to have backups both physically and also in the cloud, so that in case of data loss, data can really be retrieved without significant damage to the organizational activities. The next is to secure remote access. So the COVID has increased the rate at which people work from remote areas. Working from remote areas, especially using public Wi-Fi, also means that people or attackers, can exploit vulnerabilities, and perhaps access materials, sensitive information through certain devices connected to public networks. And so there's the need to secure remote access, for example, using virtual private networks and so on and so forth. The next is to implement mobile device management. Essentially, mobile device management means that we should have a system in place to manage the digital devices within the organization. If you have log access or access logs, where we can use to track who and who has possession of what devices, we should have in place within this device management mobile device management system, a system that is able to identify if there are some potential threats and also what potential measures can be taken to address these. Also, as part of these mobile device management strategies, there can be frequent checking of devices to ensure that softwares are up to date with the latest security patches and so on and so forth. Where devices are located and so on, so that in case devices are stolen, the data on them can remotely be wiped off, to prevent sensitive data from getting into the wrong hands. Monitor devices. I think what I've explained earlier also touch on this. And implement a disaster recovery plan. So sometimes even after implementing digital security effective practices, there may be times that perhaps some organizations might fall victims, whether due to different forms of vulnerabilities. But in any case, it's really important to have a plan in place to recover from attacks. For instance, imagine an organization system, being attacked, and workers can no longer log into organizational accounts and so on and so forth. What are the immediate steps to be taken in such a situation, whilst the organization prepares to get back on track? That is what we call the disaster recovery plan. Organizations need to have digital security disaster recovery plan in place. Next is regularly update software. I think this is really straightforward. And appoint cyber security leader. So there is a need for, some organizations have IT departments. This is really, really good. But there is also the need to appoint people who specifically will see to the digital security needs of their organization. It's not a problem if these people can already be within the IT department. The key message is that there should be people responsible for monitoring the digital security situation of the organization, and helping to put in place necessary measures to respond to digital security attacks. The next is consider outsourcing digital security services. There are some instances where outsourcing a digital security services might be cost effective than putting in place an interim maybe unit to handle such circumstances. So it's important to always analyze the situation and then, where necessary, outsource services. Collaborate with relevant stakeholders. Collaboration is very key because when CSOs collaborate with the government or the businesses, or even with other CSOs, they are able to exchange ideas, they're able to share experiences, they're able to share resources towards responding to their digital security needs. So collaboration is key. And last but not least, regularly review and update security practices. It's really important to note that within the digital security space, attackers are always reinventing new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. So it's not sufficient to say that, well, you have one solution and that's all. It's important to always review and update digital security practices so that new vulnerabilities can be identified and solved so that they are not exploited by new forms of attacks.
Thank you very much.
So
yes, sorry for interrupting, Evans. Just kindly to prep you to just wrap up quickly. Thank you very much. Yes. It is very interesting.
Yes. So this is the end of the presentation. There are five recommendations that we have also made at the national level. We understand that at the national level, it could be challenging, especially when we consider the fact that sometimes governments, tend to not be on the same page with civil society organizations in terms of facilitating the activities. But we have also 5 key recommendations at the national level that are worth reading from the main report. So overall, that is all I have for you here from my side. And these are the findings, the key findings of the report. We believe that this will actually begin very important conversations about securing ourselves and our devices within the civil society space in West Africa. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Evans. This is quite enlightening, and I can see many colleagues are appreciating the in-depth nature of, the research and, most importantly, the findings that have been shared with us. And colleagues, just to let us know, this is a research that is over 100 pages that Evans has just broke it down in less than 15 minutes. And so we will be receiving these slides. We will be receiving the recording of these discussions. We'll be receiving the full research report, an abridged version, and a highlight of the key findings that have been teased out from this piece of research, after this session. And to enable us receive these pieces of information, dear colleagues, there is a link that is being shared in the chat for us to, register for having participated in this particular session. So kindly do that to enable us have your details. Also, we can see some very encouraging comments in the chat, but they are not coming in your exact names. So kindly look at the name on which you've used to join this session. And if it is not in your name, kindly hover over your name, take the cursor close to your name. You will see some 3 dots. You click on those 3 dots and choose the rename icon, and please rename yourselves. We don't want a situation where Jim is appreciating the discussions and the comments come in the name of Gideon. that will not really help us to recognize your presence and appreciate you for the good, for following judiciously. And it's really, really, provoking these findings, learning that, 3 out of 10, of the CSO sampled, indicated that, they are facing attacks, and 70% of all those sampled, have not taken part in any training of any sort that exposes them to ways of keeping themselves safe within this digital era. These are just a few of the worrisome findings that have come here, but these findings, again, present to us significant opportunities on what lies ahead for our respective organizations. And most importantly, thanks to the 284 organizations that took part in this piece or in this study. Without your contributions, we wouldn't be, having such a wonderful session. So thanks to all of you who took part in this particular study. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I will be coming back to you, Evans. There was a question in the chat that says, what do you mean by digital infrastructure? Kindly bear that in mind so that when I invite you, you can quickly speak to that. And at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to invite the Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, a visionary leader par excellence, one who has the civil society sector in West Africa at heart and guides the institution to respond in strategic ways to the needs that you and I are expressing as actors within this space. Nana, you have the floor to do us the honors to launch this report. Hello, Nana.
Thank you very much, Jim. And it's such a delight. And I want to also commend the Mott Foundation for partnering with us and supporting this process. So important because of the essence of technology in our lives now. It runs our lives, more or less. Whether you like it or not, you have to use it. You have no choice whatsoever. We are all kind of caught up in this. And so a number of things that have come out of this report, which I think some of us, or if not all of us, at least had some idea, the level of awareness, the low level of awareness when it comes to digital security, the opportunities for us to get the information that we need, the resourcing for that, which not only financial, but also human resourcing, material resourcing of that, how to, the fact that we need to be equipped, the knowledge, the attitudes that we need, the skills that we need, and as I've already mentioned, the material, both the software and the hardware, that is all needed. The environment, and I think that is one of the areas that this report highlights, which is extremely important. And as civil society, we also have to look at how do we advocate for our national legislative, regulatory, policy environments to facilitate the way we use technology to support the work that we do, social justice, promoting social justice, social accountability, social protection, issues of well-being and development for the people in West Africa. I think these are all some of the key areas that we are all interested in and the reasons why we have moved for this. And so how do we protect ourselves? And what are the ways that we could really work on to protect ourselves? Together with Mott, we have launched this. One of the key areas that we'll be looking at is the advocacy aspect to really push our governments to change things for us. And as WACC, there are also other areas that we are working in capacity building of civil society in different areas of digital security support and technology support. We have other colleagues online, like Chris Warman and others from Connect Humanity, who are also doing some work to look at how are we able to then resource civil society organizations to enable them get the support that they need in this space and era. We don't have a choice. That is the thing. And particularly when it comes to addressing the issue of civic space, we have to be on our toes and ready to use technology and also protect ourselves and enable us, enable us to do the job that needs to be done. So what this research does for us is that it gives us the baseline information for us to look at where, and also the areas, kind of exposes the areas that we need to invest a lot more into to make sure that civil society is well equipped in this 21st century and in the years to come to achieve the missions for which we have been set up. So thank you everyone who's made time to be part of this. And I know that this is a crusade that all of us are a part of. And we look forward to partnering with everybody. And I want to thank the team, the technical team that led this, external and internal, who worked with us to enable this to happen. How do we turn technology into a tool for empowerment as civil society for ourselves and also for the citizens, that we serve, and also make sure that in doing that we protect ourselves. So thanks everyone, and again, thank you, the Mott Foundation. We appreciate the investment into this and look forward to partnering further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana, for making this report public to us all. And in the chat, dear colleagues, we know so many of us are engaging online right now. Message or a text has been shared in the chat with the link, which we can equally share on our corresponding social media platforms to get many other stakeholders know about this report and receive it. And once again, a link is being shared for us to, share our details so that the full research will be shared with us, an abridged version of the research, this presentation that has been done by Evans, some key findings that have been teased out of the report, as well as the recording of this session. So kindly fill that form so that you can receive all these pieces of information after this particular session. And thank you, Nana, once again for highlighting those important aspects that came from this research and how WAPSI will be taking this forward. But at this juncture, permit me to invite Mamo. Mamo, you have been an ardent supporter of WAPSI throughout this journey. You have not only supported financially to ensure that this study is carried out, but you've journeyed along with the team to make sure that these insights, are appreciated or inform the work that you and other stakeholders like us are doing. What are your sentiments at the moment after receiving these findings from this piece of work? Mamo?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are really, really excited that the process has got to this point. As you say, Jim, the Mott Foundation has been quite keen to get a bit of the knowledge within the civil society space around what technology is doing in this day and age to either enable or limit the work of civil society. I think Evans kind of highlighted very articulately what COVID-19 has kind of pushed civil society into doing within the digital space, as we were forced to quickly jump into using technology. And in as much as that has been a benefit, I'm sure what this research has highlighted is that there were also a lot of challenges that civil society organizations have had to grapple with and continue to grapple with as they get into this new digital space where technology has become central to our work. We're happy about the recommendations that have been put forward, because I think over and above them informing the sectors that we care about on how they can use technology and how they can protect themselves and some of the things they can do upfront to ensure that they are not affected by some of the security threats that we've seen in this report. I think it also helps institutions such as the Mott Foundation to better understand how to support civil society in this era where technology is becoming a key component of what they need to be able to be productive and to be effective in their work. And so we're really happy to see the results. And as Nana has mentioned, based on what has come out here, the next steps will be then to look at how, together with WACSI, we then work with civil society organizations to help them support to respond, address, protect themselves from some of the issues that have come up out of this report. So in just those short words, I'd like to congratulate the team that has been behind this work. It's a really comprehensive report that I think will benefit the sector, not only in West Africa, but I believe probably across the continent, because I believe the issues are very similar in other parts of the continent. So congratulations to the team, congratulations to WACSI for putting this together, and we look forward to seeing what recommendations can be taken forward. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mamo, for those kind and encouraging words. And it's quite good to know that, like other stakeholders, the Mott Foundation is taking insights from this to inspire its work moving forward. That is actually the essence of this collaboration, of this piece of work. And we really hope that beyond WACSI and the Mott Foundation, those of us present here and who will be following this session online after this live, will actually take insights, from this study and get to work as much as possible. What caught my attention were the 15 commandments, to digital safety for civil society actors. And I'm sure as we receive the report, it's good to explore these 15 commandments and see as much as possible how we abide by these commandments. At this juncture, I would like to invite Temitope, please. You have heard, Temitope, are you there, please? And Dr. Okezi, can we just do some slight exchanges or engagements now? It's been an insightful presentation of the findings that we've gotten from this study. And looking at these insights that have come from this study, given your expertise perspective, what can you share as those critical elements that we should take on board as civil society actors and do well to make use of to ensure that we operate safely within the digital space?
Right. So even though you called both of us together, I think that maybe you meant that I go first. I'm not sure. Because I wanted to know if the good doctor might go first. So the briefing that I've received was that, I will speak to why this is important.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Temitope? I think we lost you for a bit. While Temitope tries to have her internet stable, Doctor, can you hear me? Okay. I think Temitope is back. Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
You have the floor, Temitope. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
since we've lost that again.
Yes, I think we've lost Temitope again. Temitope, are you back now?
I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know why you cannot hear me. I'm back and I can hear you.
Okay. Is it possible? I don't know. I think it freezes when you want to intervene. So can you try to intervene with your video on in case there is a challenge that comes up again? Then you may take off your video. Yes. Temitope, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. Go on, please. You have the floor.
Okay. All right. So I was just saying that I think that one of the reasons why this is so important, especially in the post-pandemic context is how a lot of civil society organizations, just like other businesses and public sector organizations as well, have suspended physical operations, and now deliver services virtually. So we have newly remote workers who are now relying on home systems and networks. And this has increased the risk of cyber attacks, like as demonstrated by the report. So again, there is that underrepresentation, and this is another reason why this conversation is so important. There's that underrepresentation of civil society in commercial threats reporting. So typically where you find cybersecurity professionals referring to reports such as this, those reports are typically disproportionately focused on the commercial threat landscape. And there's an underrepresentation of cyber threats that are facing civil society organizations in much of those reports that we have seen before available in the public domain. And this, of course, presents a distorted picture of the landscape. Third thing is where you find cybersecurity policy making, the participation of civil society organizations is typically tokenistic. So, when there are the open calls for participation, you are allowed to come in. But how much of that civil society intervention reflects in the rules and norms that are being drafted is a different thing. And I'm going to highlight how across the region, with increasing public policy focus on cyber threats and governments often citing national security concerns and sometimes inaction on the part of intermediaries to act on cases such as terrorism, misinformation, or child sexual abuse material, you then find that the cybersecurity laws that we are drafting are draconian in nature. They restrict online freedoms. They criminalize online content in broad and vague terms. You find privacy intrusive data collection practices and surveillance activities that are justified in the name of national security. So that marginalization of civil society organizations in the broader context of political and policy conversations adds to the vulnerable position that they already have. I'm not going to, talk extensively about types of cyber attacks. I want to speak to certain trends in cyber attacks that are not highlighted. So the former speaker spoke extensively about the cyber attacks and the trends in phishing and malware and denial of service attacks. I want to just say that at the heart of that is data. When you think cybersecurity threats or mitigation for civil society organization, just think data. It's confidentiality, integrity, availability, loss of data. That's what you usually find at the heart of those kind of attacks. And of course, he mentioned how this is particularly affecting civil society. But another trend I want to mention is surveillance. Governments and actors are using digital surveillance to monitor activities of CSOs, and this is compromising safety and privacy of staff, of beneficiary communities, of partners, especially civil society organizations that are working in areas of human rights, political activism, democracy, accountability, good governance. These are typically target civil society organizations, and the practices are to intimidate, stifle free expression, and just generally deter them from carrying out their normal work. Another trend in threats is harassment. So you find that online civil society organizations are being harassed, and harassment can take various forms. Sometimes it's hate speech, sometimes it's threats, direct threats, sometimes it's targeted disinformation, sometimes it's doxing. Their addresses, phone numbers, email addresses are put in the public domain for any harasser to pick up. In terms of regulations and policies, of course, we've seen, maybe I will disagree a little bit with we don't have enough. I think there's a trend in proliferation of digital security policies in recent years. Like I mentioned, there's increasing public policy focus on threats. And many of these countries are adopting laws, they are drafting regulations. Now, whether it is comprehensive is a different thing. And I think that the last speaker also really drew out, the comparison within countries, what they are doing, those that have repressive laws, those that have more progressive laws. So whether these these trends and regulations and policies meet the needs of civil society organizations is a different conversation. Like I said, given the context of their participation again in policy drafting, given the context of governments often targeting them, so we have cybercrime laws, for instance, being drafted in response to, to criminalize offenses such as unauthorized access to data and cyber fraud, and a legislative framework that prosecutes criminals, for instance. But again, like I said, what about its use to stifle expression, to target political opponents? In Nigeria, we have the Cybercrime Act of 2015, which has been weak in implementation in terms of successful prosecution of cyber criminals. But in the first 2 years, the timeline of that act was actually something that I followed. And moderately, I don't have the data in front of me right now, I can tell you that over 10 people were picked up based on that legislation in terms of comments posted online. Journalists, bloggers, ordinary everyday citizens in Nigeria. The Cybercrime Act 2020 in Ghana, I think it gives Cybersecurity Authority the Cybersecurity Authority broad authority to block or filter online content. I came across a case in 2021, an incident where the judiciary in Ghana requested some online content to be removed. There are some who think that this was highly politicized and lacked transparency and perhaps was disproportionate. But this is the kind of thing that we should be looking at when we are talking about trends and regulation and policy, especially affecting civil society organizations. So we see that there are policies, and policies are essential, but they do not address the specific needs and vulnerabilities of CSOs, especially those of us in many West African countries that are operating in highly politicized and sensitive environments, and we're facing unique threats such as surveillance and cyber attacks and online harassment. So in terms of policies to address specific digital security needs of CSOs, I'll give an example of data protection legislation. Many countries are drafting. There are countries that still don't have a comprehensive regulatory framework for protection of data, but that's actually one area of policy that I think is pertinent, that is useful to address the specific needs of CSOs. Another is also the freedom of information legislation that allows CSOs to be able to access data in the public domain in a legal manner, and in a secure manner. Of course, implementation, again, effective implementation. I know that Ghana has an FOI. We do have one too in Nigeria, but effective implementation is also another thing, whether civil society organizations actually have access to this data, especially when, that data is something that is sensitive or maybe even embarrassing to government. We have talked about best practices. I think that one of the things that CSOs should do regularly is digital security assessment. So on a broad level, this report helps us to see that when it comes to securing hardware, maybe CSOs are not doing so badly, but in other things such as encryption mechanisms or use of anti-malware and firewall softwares, things like VPN, it just really helps that we can, on a continuous basis, identify vulnerabilities and develop these mitigation strategies. It also helps that we have the budget, very important, and the support, the continuous, that CSOs are supported to have a budget that allows them to adopt and use this secure communication and collaboration tools. And then training, very, very important. Access Now, I will just drop that here, is an organization that I know. There could be others, but I think it would be useful as a follow-up for the institutes, doing such a really great work, to also follow up with resources where organizations can find help. Access Now has a digital security helpline. They offer trainings, they offer tools to civil society organizations that are working in sensitive political environments on how they can protect themselves and their data, their devices, and generally just improve digital resilience outcomes. So I think my intervention in conclusion is that policies are important, but they are not addressing the specific needs and vulnerabilities that have been identified. We need policies, we need programs, we need responses that are tailored to the specific needs of CSOs, including comprehensive data protection legislation and effective implementation of freedom of information legislation where it exists. So that's my brief intervention. Thank you very, very much for listening.
It is brief and very deep and insightful. Thank you very much for those insights that really complement this piece of work. Dr. Casey, I will come now to you, given your rich experience within the civil society space. After these findings have been shared with us, this report is available for us. As civil society actors, what should we take on board? How should we take ownership of this body of work to make sure that it adds value to our effort to staying safe online in this era? Dr. Casey?
Thank you for having me on this program. I'm really excited.
Dr. Casey, can you hear me? I think you've frozen out for a minute.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Please continue. Thank you.
So I think these are also part of the challenges on stable network.
Yeah. Dr. Casey, if you can hear me, kindly turn off your video so that,
Understudy it and simulate it and work with it. Oh.
Yeah, can you just turn off your video and make your intervention, please, in case the bandwidth is not very strong. But we can hear you now. Yes, go on, please.
Okay, what I'm saying is that this research is timely and is quite useful for CSOs in West Africa. We need to really study it and work with it.
The internet is not serving as the friend we want at this moment. I don't know why this must happen only now, but I think, hello, Dr. Casey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, please proceed.
Sorry for those interruptions. Those are some of the challenges. So what I'm saying, in effect, is that this research, this work is very, very necessary for CSOs to really understudy it. It's unfortunate that the number that we are speaking to in this presentation are very limited. So for a few of us that are chance to be in this program, this webinar, it behoves us to really expand this knowledge. I'm sure that most of us work with networks of
Again, a slight interruption here. Dr. Casey? Hello?
Oh,
can you hear me?
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but the sound quality is not very good. Try one more time, and if it doesn't work, we will find an alternative to get your reactions to this volume of work that is being put out for use for civil society. Is that okay? Just try one more time, let's see.
Yes, what I was saying that this work is quite useful for CSOs in West Africa. A lot of issues have come up as a result of research. And the past panelists that spoke also highlighted some of the challenges that the civil society actors are facing in terms of digital insecurity. And of course, there have been efforts even by state actors to begin to shrink the civil space. And one tool they can use effectively is the digital network, the digital security network. Of course, in Nigeria, at the time, we had that Twitter.
Is there any way that you could improve on the sound? I'm having some trouble getting you.
Hello?
Yes, please continue. Please, colleagues, if you want to intervene, kindly raise your hand and we will give you the floor, please. Kindly continue.
This research is very, very useful, and I wish to further appeal that we should go further than this by further researching on the threats the civil society actors are having. Can we have a further research on mapping the security threats within the digital security threat that civil society actors are facing? Can we localize it? I know your research is quite expansive, taking into cognizance the whole West Africa, but can we also begin to localize it in situ? See it that more trainings. I know during the COVID era, WACSI organized series of trainings for the civil society actors, of which my organization was one of the beneficiaries. We really need to further expand the training. A lot of civil society organizations are facing lots of challenges and threats. And of course, my organization, we've had such threat, such challenges, where we were to present our research to our donor a day to the timeline. Our digital security was breached, and we lost a whole gamut of information. And I know it wasn't a comfortable experience. And I know there are many civil society organizations that are having similar problems, but they don't know how to express themselves or don't know how to improve on their skills. So this research is very, very useful. We need to step it down. We need to ensure that civil society organizations in West Africa continue to get technical assistance, such as encryption. Encryption. How can they have a network that is secured? Today, there's a lot of cybersecurity best practices. They need to be taught these best practices and how they can begin to implement it. And of course, most civil society organizations in Africa don't have the resources to purchase security software and or even to upgrade their technology infrastructure. There's need for support. I believe that following from this research, from this outcome, you've seen the gaps as a result of it is to further fill those gaps. And that could be done through calling for donors to really provide funding to train CSOs, to empower them to purchase security softwares and to upgrade their technology. That will be very necessary. And also through this research, of course, you've been able to establish some networks and partnerships. Can this partnership and networks be concretized so that we build partnerships that provide access to resources and expertise that will help civil society organizations in West Africa to improve their digital security? So in all, I wish to commend you for this highly innovative and timely research. The information is really rich, and we should take it a step further by ensuring that all civil society actors in West Africa are captured within the net of having to operate in a digitally secured environment. And of course, these several threats that civil society actors are facing. In Nigeria, we have civil society organizations that are being rebranded as supporting terrorism, of helping to fund terrorism act. Some could be doing that. Some could have that tag in order to silence their voices. So it's quite necessary that this training, this research is made available, and they also get to know what resources and expertise that is available to them and how they can seek help so that they continue to provide the services they are doing. Of course, the civil society actors in West Africa are doing a lot. Government can't do it alone. They are supporting government, but they need to be supported as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okezi, for raising those very salient points. And one thing that really strikes me, from your submission is the need for further research. And that really complements the often said statement that every research serves as a foundation for new avenues for research. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for braving the odds, to defeat the challenge of unstable or unstable connection. We really appreciate your resilience in that regard. Evans, I would like to come to you, and colleagues who have been sharing very insightful, appreciative comments in the chat as well as questions. We thank you very much, and we are going to take a couple of them. And Evans, a question was raised around what digital infrastructure means. In addition to that, Zonziwo is curious. Zonziwo is actually the executive director of the Women for Change, for a Change Cameroon, an NGO based in Cameroon. She is curious to know if issues of artificial intelligence was a threat or opportunity. Did it emerge in any way in the study? And another question, I'm sorry, I am piling up the questions, so you just wrap them up in, say, 3 to 5 minutes. Another very important question, the trend that emerged with regards to, or the proportion of impact of digital threats on CSOs in Nigeria. Melissa Juicy is asking, she wants to know if, you weighted the responses by country in any form in this study. Evans, sorry for overloading you, but when you do good work, more is expected of you. Evans, you have the floor, please. 3 minutes, please.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. So I think, before I push the questions, let me thank Executive Director Nana for a brilliant presentation and also the launch of this report, and also Tope for her input. I think she was really on point, especially with her inputs on data being at the heart of all these threats and attacks, and government surveillance and online harassment. I think all these things are key components that we have detailed in this report, and I think it was really spot on for her to also mention these. And thanks to Dr. Kelechukwu also. I think as you rightly said, every research is a foundation for another research. So there has been a lot of threats that CSOs reported, even for the few that we sampled. Many had experienced multiple attacks. So there were instances where one CEO experienced like 6-7 forms of attacks within the same period of time. And so in the report, you would find that we have put some of these cases in boxes, and then we try to interpret what this means, and also provide some kind of guidance as to how that can be a learning point for other CSOs. And then we have also put some case studies in the appendix that you would find that touch on some of the experiences that some of the CSOs reported that they are facing. So overall, just to say that, of course, there are so many different parts of this research that can be taken and looked at closely, and which can form a basis for their own research in entirety. So thanks for all your contributions and for the time. Now coming back to the questions, I believe probably 2 minutes is already gone, but I'll be brief. Let me start with the infrastructure. With digital security infrastructure, basically I mean 2 things. There is the virtual part, which has to do with software, software. So when we are talking about digital security, and we are talking about maybe protecting devices from being hacked, or protecting devices for malware infections and so on and so forth, then we need some kind of virtual technologies. And mostly these are softwares, right? So software, and there are different forms of software. So that is one component of the digital infrastructure that I'm talking about. And oftentimes CSOs are limited in this space because they don't have the necessary funding to acquire these softwares. And sometimes because they have limited funding and they don't have the resources to actually acquire the premium version of this software, they resort to pirated versions, which usually also come with their own tragedies. To find probably if that's a more suitable word. And so software is one part of the whole infrastructure discussion. And then we have the hardware component, which has to do with the physical things that must be set up. The devices themselves are also a hardware. How latest are they? How up to date are they? And sometimes the more expensive technologies or tools also have the better security, and that's also a matter of resources. So basically, these are the two main components that I'm referring to if I'm talking about having the necessary digital security infrastructure in place. But of course, it's also important to note that, well, perhaps maybe this is also an avenue for further research, but it's important to accompany the digital security infrastructure also with traditional infrastructure. And with traditional infrastructure here, I mean, things like internet, speedy internet connection, and so on and so forth. So all this part is an extension and probably not closely related to digital security, but I think it's also important that we have this in mind. The next question on AI. So AI was not a main focus of this study, as you would already know. But I think AI has been termed, I think somebody like Bill Gates, for example, has termed AI as the most important digital revolution in this era, aside the development of microchips, right from the time that chips were developed and all that. He refers to AI as this most significant technological development that we find ourselves in this era. So a lot of research works are beginning to emerge from this, and we hope that probably maybe there may be new trends of research that may give us more insights. But personally, one of my research papers, which will soon come out, it's about the hopes and fears about digitalization in Ghana particularly. And there in this study, to probably, to some of you, it might come as a surprise. Many, I think the majority of respondents were really highly optimistic about digitalization. And that's also perhaps because of, the leapfrogging nature of digitalization, offering people more opportunities to overcome infrastructural challenges, which tend to be some things that have been marred by market failure and state failure in the past. So that's also for the AI question. And then there's also a question about weighing. We did not particularly use weighing in this study. There is no single methodology that has no weakness. There are different limitations also to this research, which we have highlighted in the report. And so I don't know if that also answers that question. So to be specific, we did not apply weighing to the estimates. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Before we get the concluding comments of our key panelists, just to take a couple of questions, reactions in the chat, not questions. I think there was a question that came up with regards to how, WACC will share these findings with policymakers and make them, to take possible action. Thank you for that question. And that's actually one of the next steps that will follow the release of this study, to see how a policy framework can be crafted, or an advocacy framework can be crafted to reach out to policymakers. And we will definitely leverage the experience of Côte d'Ivoire. And thanks for Jean Ndofu for sharing. He says, under the direction of a member of parliament, the people decided to bring the telecom agencies to make the internet accessible to the less fortunate. We can support and duplicate these kind of initiatives in all the countries of the sub-region to allow our population to have access to more resources. And Guillaume Soto is sharing some tips in the chat. Kindly visit the chat to take some of these tips on how they are working to stay safe online. He says, we use cloud to save our data, Google Drive, but we also have a backup of our Google Drive, which is afi.ai. Thank you, Guillaume Soto, for sharing that. Marion Lowe, thank you for your attentiveness. I can see you, right? It's like we are sitting face to face to one another. And he says, I hope so he says, I think that the knowledge on artificial intelligence needs its own session. We will take that into consideration. And Evans, I'm sure we will invite you to discuss this further with us. And why not Temitope? This technology impacts every sector of human life. Artificial technology has so many pluses and minus. That is definitely something we will take into account. And Dr. Casey says, thanks so much, WAPSI and Mott Foundation for this research and publicizing this report. We appreciate and look forward to having the presentation as well as subsequent follow-up actions. Dr. Okezi goes on to express, explain some of the challenges, digital threats he has faced, as an individual and within his organization. Guillaume further says, si vous souhaitez connaître votre niveau de connaissance en cybersécurité et autres, vous pouvez aller sur pix.org ou pix.fr. J'utilise cet outil pour évaluer les compétences numériques de mes participants. Et pourquoi pas pour nous-mêmes? Dear colleagues, thank you. We cannot, unfortunately, take all the comments in the chat. We are about wrapping up. We are slightly above the time, but thank you for your patience. Just bear with us for the last few minutes. Temitope, we are about wrapping up, and it will be good to hear from you. What are the last, resounding remarks that you would like to share with everyone in the room? Temitope?
I think that this is my intervention. Lastly, I think that this is very, very important work that the West African Civil Society Institute is doing. Like I'd mentioned earlier, when there's typically this type of research, it is overly focused on the commercial landscape. So this is important work. I want to thank everyone, the team, the funders who are supporting this kind of work. I think in the layer that we can add to this is these recommendations beyond paper. How can we take it forward? How can we resource civil society organizations? How can we make the case to funders so that civil society organizations can be able to access institutional funding that allows them to build the capacity to protect themselves, given that life online, as we know it, has entirely moved. Life as we know it has entirely moved online now. And then the second, intervention I want to make is we need to also start engaging public policy to improve digital resilience for civil society organizations. It's not enough that we have policies within organizations, that we have practices within organizations. There are external factors out there. Sometimes our governments are coming for us, and we need to have policies in place that are focused on the specific threats that are facing civil society organizations right now. These are my interventions. In conclusion, thank you very much for having me.
It has been a pleasure, Temitope, and those are very, impactful concluding remarks that we can take from here. Dear colleagues, before you leave, just a couple of action points. In the chat, we've shared a link to find out or to get your impression of about this session, as that will enable us, to improve. There are a couple of studies that will be released in the months ahead. One is around the reimagined role of civil society actors or organizations across West Africa. That is a study that you wouldn't want to miss when it is going to be launched. And also we are carrying out a study, particularly with our comrades in French-speaking countries, to understand or appreciate the impact of decolonization of aid within their context. That is another study that will be released in the months ahead. You don't want to miss any of these opportunities to gain insights or share insights with us. So kindly share your feedback with regards to this session, as that will be used to improve on our delivery in subsequent sessions. A poll will equally be shared, or a Mentimeter link will be shared in the chat. Kindly click on it, and in one word, what is your overall impression about this particular publication and this launch? In one word, a Mentimeter link has been shared in the chat. Please kindly make use of that link to share your insights with us. Yes, you can see the Mentimeter link in the chat. We are looking forward to seeing the words that will be popping up, and we can see, Mamo, thank you so much for these remarks. Thank you, Waxy, Evans, and all the contributors for putting together this significant piece of information for civil society in West Africa. The Mott Foundation is pleased to contribute to this work. And while you are pleased as the Mott Foundation, we are very proud of you as a partner who has supported in magnanimous ways to make this come through. Thank you so much, Mamo, and extend the gratitude of all of us from WAPSI and the civil society community in West Africa, because we truly appreciate your invaluable support to this work. We can see the feedback coming in: brilliant, necessary, excellent, timely, illuminating, enriching, informative. Kindly keep sending in your comments using the Mentimeter link, as we duly appreciate your feedback. And we kindly invite you, dear colleagues, to visit westafrica.techsoup.global for available technology resources for non-profit organizations. This is being managed by the West Africa Civil Society Institute through TechSoup West Africa Program for Technology Donation. We look forward to engaging with you on this platform, and definitely there are some resources there that can benefit your respective institutions. Keep the insights coming using the Mentimeter link, dear colleagues. I can see enlightening, une bonne initiative. Merci beaucoup pour votre perspective, pour les nombreuses perspectives qui sont partagées avec nous par rapport à vos impressions de cet échange. And thank you once again for that. And at this moment, dear colleagues, we would just want to try to take a picture of everyone that is here with us. So can you turn on your videos, please? I can see Marion Loe McLean. Thank you for being with us all through. Dr. Okezi, I'm happy that the internet is more stable now. There are some colleagues that have the name Gideon Aheonkra, whereas their faces are not the faces of the Gideon I know. Sorry, I can't mention your names. Maria Mulindi, Temitope, thank you for staying on with us. Avero F. King, thank you so much. Evans, we appreciate. Fifi, can you take us through the picture taking, please? Hello, Fifi, are you there, or Gideon?
Yeah. Please, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So, thank you very much. On the count of three, we are going to take a photo. You can all share it now.
I think, Fifi, your sound is fading out from time to time. But you said from the count of three, we are going to take the first shot. And we'll do that on several occasions. So we are going for the first. Permit me to count. 1, 2, 3. Please keep on a beautiful smile like Evans.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Great. Fifi, can you continue? Take over, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, colleagues, for this beautiful picture, for our social media, and of course, our records. Please, you could be checking on our social media handles. We've shared a couple of posts about this, some highlights and some interesting infographics as well from the research findings, these interesting findings. So please do that, and do not hesitate to share with your colleagues as well and your network. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gideon, for that. And colleagues, we really do appreciate Hamza Aliyu, Marion Lowe, Evans, we very much appreciate you. And if you are one of the 284 organizations that responded to this survey, we appreciate you. We know responding to surveys can be tiring, but we appreciate the fact that you take out time to share feedback with us. And Dr. Okezi, beyond that, you even went further, to participate, with us here and share further insights. Temitope, we want to thank you so much. Mamo Mohapi from the Mott Foundation, thank you for making our time to exchange with us in this session. Dear colleagues, we want to invite you to engage with us on our different platforms. Our website, of course, www.waxy.org. If you want to write to us via email, info@waxy.org. We have a Facebook page that is very active. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, and on YouTube, where you will find the recording of this particular session. And we had some wonderful colleagues joining on Facebook Live and as well as YouTube Live. Thank you so much for joining us online, for sharing your insights. It's always a pleasure engaging with you. Without you, Waxy wouldn't be doing the work we are doing. And so we thank you so much for staying focused and staying tuned to all the programs we are rolling out with you, civil society actors across West Africa at heart. We will come back to you for more programs, and do not hesitate to send us an email with initiatives that you think the West Africa Civil Society Institute can collaborate with you, and why not work to ensure that we achieve our common goals. We have a wonderful interpretation team that has, challenged the phenomenon that language is a barrier in West Africa. You have made it possible for our colleagues in French-speaking countries who equally participated in invaluable ways to the success of this study, to make sure that they participate and gain insights from this study. Dear interpreters, we want to appreciate you immensely for your constant collaboration with Waxy, and we hope that this collaboration will bear more fruits to make sure that we bring civil society actors across the region into a common space to deliberate and share insights on things that matter and can contribute to the prosperity and development of our region. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the cool music that will be shared with us as we say goodbye for now and see you soon. Once again, I have been your humble host, Jim Chick Fomunjong, and I work at the West Africa Civil Society Institute. See you in our next session. Bye-bye for now.